Kim Jong-un has met with senior South Korean officials for the first time. The North Korean leader hosted the delegation from Seoul for dinner, a move that would have been inconceivable last year. He expressed his firm will to vigorously advance ties between the two nations and to pursue reunification. No mention was made, however, of dialogue between the North and the US, one of the principal aims of the visit. Donald Trump says he'll talk once North Korea has denuked, a condition dismissed by Kim Jong-un.
Important relationship, obvious for us, important to NATO. We'll have a lot of interesting things to talk about and get caught up on since we last saw one another. So I want to welcome them.
Secretary Tillerson, when the President said that a few days ago North Korea called up and wanted to talk, what was he referring to?
You'll have to ask the White House.
Is the State Department doing enough to counter Russia's disinformation efforts?
We have more to do. Thank you.
Australis. So, great visit here in Japan. So far, I just arrived yesterday afternoon. Bit of a bittersweet visit for me in the context of this will be the last visit in uniform. I'm going from the west coast of the United States, and certainly over the last 8 following that. So it'll be a busy day. I can reaffirm that the relationship has never been stronger certainly between the Pacific Fleet and the Japanese Maritime Defense Forces Pacific Fleet Commander. So he comes in with a focus on the theater and an understanding of the theater. Before I answer the question directly, I think it's important to think in terms of the context of that news. And I think that context is drawn not by looking forward, but by looking back. To answer the demand signal of the U.S. government and the expectations of those around the world of continued U.S. support for the long-established international order. It's a challenge for me to put the context, that statement, freedom of navigation, into a context, because once again, the intent is clearly understood. But we've seen actions that diminish the freedom of navigation in all the dime-filled domains, the diplomatic, the information, the military. So, unfortunately, I think we're left with a wait and see without that clarity of the region as well. Let me first say, make it very clear that, and Secretary of Defense Mattis has made it clear, negotiations. So this is a concern that you've raised that I think is really common in most of the discussions that I have. We continue to review the sustainability of forces from a shipyard perspective. Fitzgerald, we returned her to the United States, and she will be repaired there.
North Korea floats giving up nukes, opening door to U.S. talks. North Korea is willing to give up its nuclear weapons if the safety of Kim Jong-un's regime is guaranteed, South Korea said, boosting pressure on the U.S. to agree to peace talks. Kim will meet South Korean President Moon Jae-in for a summit along their shared border at the end of April, the statement said, adding that North Korea was ready to suspend weapons tests and hold candid talks with the U.S. to normalize relations. The announcement came after South Korean envoys returned to Seoul after meeting Kim in Pyongyang. They are expected to visit the U.S. soon. North Korea has clearly expressed its intention for denuclearization on the Korean peninsula, and if there is no military threat, and North Korea's regime's security is promised, they have clarified that there is no reason to hold nuclear weapons, Moon's office said. The White House, National Security Council and State Department didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. The Japanese yen weakened against the dollar after the announcement. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that North Korea must be willing to denuclearize before talks can begin, even as tensions on the Korean peninsula have eased recently as both countries participated in the Winter Olympics. Trump has threatened military action to stop Kim from acquiring the capability to strike the U.S. homeland with a nuclear weapon. Analysts caution that North Korea has a history of using negotiations to buy time for its weapons program. The Kim dynasty has over the years raised the prospect of abandoning its nuclear weapons program if the U.S. gave up its hostile policies, though serious negotiations haven't taken place since six-party talks also including China, Japan and Russia broke down in 2009. Its progress, certainly more than most would have expected, but it's still rhetorical, said Robert Kelly, a political science associate professor at South Korea's Pusan National University. While it's unclear if Trump will agree to return to negotiations, he said, the pressure will be on to talk. The U.S. and North Korea have been at loggerheads since the Korean War ended without a peace treaty almost 65 years ago, and Kim's government has repeatedly said nuclear weapons are necessary to deter any U.S.-led military action. As recently as Saturday, North Korea said the country wouldn't accept U.S. preconditions. It insists that it will have dialogue only for making the DPRK abandon nuclear weapons and persist in maximum pressure until complete denuclearization is realized. A North Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson told the official Korean Central News Agency, "This is really more than ridiculous."
After meeting with counterparts from the DPRK, 2 members of the South Korean delegation attended a welcome dinner with Kim Jong-un, the first time the North's leader has ever met with officials from the South. The head of the delegation says the aim is to broaden diplomacy beyond the scope of the Olympics.
평창 동계올림픽을 계기로 조성된
We will deliver President Moon Jae-in's wish to bring about denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula and permanent peace by extending the goodwill and better inter-Korean relations created by the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics.
의지를 분명히 전달하겠습니다.
Seoul says that would require Pyongyang and Washington to be on speaking terms.
The delegation will discuss setting conditions for a DPRK-U.S. dialogue on denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and improving the relationship between South and the DPRK. After they return on the afternoon of March 6th and report on the results, they will travel to the United States to brief officials there on their visit.
President Moon was invited to Pyongyang by Kim Jong-un's sister Yo-jong when she attended the Winter Games opening ceremony. Though Moon has set communication between the DPRK and the U.S. as a precondition. President Donald Trump says the U.S. is prepared to talk, but that the DPRK must show it is prepared to, in his words, de-nuke, a demand DPRK state media has labeled preposterous. But the fact there are now South Korean politicians in Pyongyang holding face-to-face talks with Kim Jong-un shows that a still fragile diplomacy with the DPRK is nonetheless progressing faster than anyone could have imagined just a few months ago.
The U.S. Navy has given defense giant Lockheed Martin a $150 million contract to develop 2 high-energy laser weapon systems that could be worth more than $942 million. The Helios system, which is short for high-energy laser and integrated optical dazzler with surveillance system, combines 3 key capabilities, integrated together for the first time in one weapon system. A rep for Lockheed Martin says the Helios program is the first of its kind and brings together laser weapon, long-range ISR, and counter-UAS capabilities, dramatically increasing the situational awareness and layered defense options available to the U.S. Navy. Helios will have 2 lasers built by 2020 to counter boats, drones, and other unmanned aerial systems by blinding their cameras. One laser will be test-mounted on a U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, while the other will be put through its paces at a White Sands Missile Missile Range in New Mexico. The system will also be equipped with tracking cameras and sensors to detect hostile aircrafts. While Lockheed Martin called the Helios system the first of its kind, it's not the first time the company has outfitted America's armed forces with lasers. Lockheed Martin has been making laser weapons for over 40 years. The company previously received a $25 million contract to design, build, and test a 60-kilowatt electric laser for use on Army trucks. And in November, the company won a $26 million Air Force contract to develop a high-energy laser to test on fighter jets by 2021. The deal was announced on Thursday, the same day that Russian President Vladimir Putin revealed new weapons under development in Russia. Meanwhile, the Pentagon wants more money to develop hypersonic nukes as well. Since taking office, President Trump has added more than $200 billion to the projected levels of defense spending for fiscal year 2017 to 2018. Now, Washington's projected military expenditures for fiscal year 2018 is set at $700 billion.
Saying, at least out of the North Koreans, that they had a satisfactory dinner. The South Koreans haven't had an official statement yet. But this certainly was Kim Jong-un, I think, his way of, for lack of a better word, coming out in the international community, really showcasing himself. Not quite to the extent that we saw, say, in 2000 with the Inter-Korean Summit for Kim Jong-il to really change the way the world saw him, but certainly a step in that direction for this new North Korean leader.
And Kim said that the Winter Olympics actually helped provide a good atmosphere for reconciliation, unity, and inter-Korean dialogue. Is this something that can be built on? Is there a momentum here?
Well, I think there's some momentum here. And again, if you look back at the two previous examples, if you look back at 1994, 93, 94, with the build-up to a near-conflict situation, then the agreed framework, then the North Koreans opening up to the South Koreans and to the world briefly. Then, of course, Kim Il-sung died. Then you move on to 1998, 99 after the North Korea's first Taepodong launch. And then they have this big opening up to the world. And I think we're looking at the North Koreans trying for a third run at this, trying to really use this as an opportunity to break out of sort of the sanctions box that the United States is using to constrict the North Koreans. And the real challenge is that this time the United States says, you know, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, fool me three times, and I shouldn't be president. So they're really holding back on trying to engage with the North Koreans in the way the North Koreans would like to use this moment.
So what needs to happen next?
Well, I don't know what needs to happen next. It's more like what's likely to happen next. I think the North Koreans are going to push very hard to try to put the South Koreans in a space where, although they're really trying to hold on to that relationship with the United States, the offers from North Korea are going to be extremely enticing. And again, this direct visit with Kim by the South Korean officials was a very important piece of that. Then the North Koreans are going to try to shape the international community's view that it's the United States ultimately that's being resistant. And you're already hearing echoes of that from China, from Russia. So there is this groundswell to try to force the United States into dialogue at an earlier phase than the U.S. is actually ready for.
Roger.
A critical and historic face-to-face in Pyongyang. For the first time in his 6+ years in power, Kim Jong-un meets in person with top-ranking South Korean leaders. South Korean officials tell CNN they carried a letter to Kim from South Korean President Moon Jae-in. An important moment, analysts say, because the young dictator has had such little exposure to outsiders.
Up till now, the person with the most, the foreigner with the most face time would be Dennis Rodman.
And the two top officials South Korea sent to meet with Kim are seen as crucial choices. South Korea's spy chief, Sa-hoon, helped organize two previous summits between North and South Korean leaders and could be laying the groundwork for another one. And South Korea's national security chief, Chung Oi-yong, has close ties with U.S. officials. Analysts say he's got Trump National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster on speed dial. Experts say the two South Koreans will be able to give Washington and Seoul much-needed intelligence on the reclusive Kim.
They'll want to see how adept he is at give and take, whether he's using notes, whether he's got a very strong command of a wide range of issues.
And they'll be able to assess Kim's physical health. He once disappeared from public view for more than a month and was later seen limping. Just hours before the groundbreaking meeting in Pyongyang, President Trump told a dinner audience in Washington that the North Koreans want to talk to the U.S. and said, quote, "So would we, but you have to de-nuke." The North Koreans say it's, quote, preposterous for the Trump team to insist that they move toward giving up their nuclear weapons before any talks can begin.
And there may be a little bit of brinksmanship going on both sides. The question is whether we can at least talk about the agenda for talks, not begin any negotiations, but talk about whether there is some package of subjects, including a peace agreement that would formally end the Korean War, which is still just based on a temporary armistice, regional stabilization measures, and denuclearization.